이도 샤지지네 딩게기 심한 빈지기 된 도야라 지금 등로에 되듯이 심한 빌루 지여버시 지부 중국의 투명이 만지는 것이 왜 되지 이것이 이가라 기본 빈도 투명이 만지는 거 어째 심한 빈지기 필요 되는 진로 예가 장도 마세비 이가라 타버 주수도 너무 벌써 전도 통치 너무 왕기 제lembal라 전도 통치 가도 너무 왕기 강성 코 네 지진에 너무 왕기 라완 제리아 딜러 전주 통치진에 딩제비 제어딜러 탄도글로 야미나지 너무 치원의 탄도글로 좀 많이 봐 딩제비 탄도의 생빈에 다루기 너무 지워당 너무 치원 너무 알아주기 당도 방지 진계적으로 코에미에서 너무 방지인데 근데 너무 치원에 타면 진마를 한데 생빈기 딩계기지 넘버당 넘버 이게 주요하지 비가라야 이장 이거 장지가 무슨 지금이 좀 차상적인 양의 계획이 네 지금 영수 주가 집회 자구에서 말해 비가라 필요진비去想去的生计你想去进步的通想去进步的国际军公司原地工地的他都想去那么那个想去的国际这个想去的呢想去了国内的托年你想去的呢就不具有些第一托年这个想去的呢就没有托年的怎么你的行政的呢就没有想去的呢就没了怎么你的路讲这些呢刚才上面的当这些呢怎么你的心这些呢我想去的心这我想去的心的他的就有道理那么那个样的就上去就跟突然交流上边路一他的呢挺多人你自己参与进去了这些呢我想去的心结的第一托呢就想去的心结呢我想去的心结呢心结他有道理那么那个样的就上去就跟突然交流那么那么等就我你当着下个怎么样吧当着整体那如果这个了想去清理国防突击的头这是一觉得楼里旁边是东西背起去想去什么东个人物对那如果让你就会想去做新建的但别人也是一学的人就用这个也是一学的人就会考虑的了发现突击学的所谓的用有的对吧发现突击学的这些的那是浪基金他晒的浪是进这些呢他都上这个啥了样这个什么第一难为了那个想去的新这边那类的想去的新这边那类的想去的新这个特别了就这么个对举问题吧当然后大型两地的想去新界就这么个对举问题新界几当结为英雄有了我想去的新界的特了你有的呢但等到比大型两地的想去的新界的特第一公司多最低公司多的差的有的是为什么这个问题
So, then as for the sort of what are the prerequisites to getting into the actual kind of stages of mind training, at the very least, we need to have the attitude of a kind of being of small scope. At first, having confidence that there are future lives, and thereby thinking about the future beyond just this life. So we need to be thinking at least about gaining good things in future lives in order to be really practicing Dharma, wanting to escape those kinds of lower realms and so forth. But then not just thinking about our future lives, we go sort of beyond that by thinking in the sort of capacity of the middling capacity of thought that all abodes within samsara, all that we take that is under the control of our is still in the nature of suffering. So not only do we have a sort of wish or striving for something good in a future rebirth, but this we are thinking about getting out of this suffering cycle of samsara, the wish to be freed from this kind of bondage of our afflictions, that which sort of binds us or ties us, keeps us in this cycle of suffering. When we realize that we want to be free from that, we have a genuine kind of desire that comes from the depths of our heart, a real sort of sense of wanting to be free, of wishing to get out of that kind of samsara. This, again, is a sort of necessary prerequisite to engaging in this sort of mind training. But that is not sufficient. We also need to give rise to the kind of Mahayana Dharma, that of the great self, wishing to achieve perfect, unexcelled, perfect enlightenment, the state in which we have removed all fault and gained all good qualities in order to be able to actually benefit all sentient beings. So this kind of mind that's striving for that state of unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment, the sort of perfection of our own aims and that of others, we need to give rise first to this attitude of aspirational bodhicitta, where we are striving, we have this wish from the depth of our heart, thinking, I am going to attain that state of perfect, complete enlightenment, of Buddhahood, for the benefit of all sentient beings. But that itself is not sufficient. We need this kind of mind of engagement, where we go beyond that, taking a vow that we are going to actually engage in the various trainings of bodhisattvas, particularly that of the six perfections. And through training, engaging in those trainings of a bodhisattva, we are able to then really achieve that goal, that final goal of Buddhahood. So we train sequentially in this way, first thinking about future lives, and then getting out of samsara, and then benefiting all sentient beings. And this is really grounded in generating this attitude of bodhicitta, that aspiration to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And there are two main methods for doing that. The first is the sevenfold cause and effect method, or the six causes of one effect method, where we see all sentient beings as having been our mothers and so forth. And here in the 8 verses on mind training, we primarily are approaching that through the method of equalizing and exchanging self and other in order to generate this kind of unfabricated, genuine attitude of bodhicitta that's not just aspirational, but is really engaging, is willing to train in those various trainings of bodhisattvas in order to attain for the benefit of all sentient beings. So these are the kinds of sort of genuine attitudes that we should have as a prerequisite to engaging in this 8 verses on mind training.
Mình hoán đổi điện mình với tất cả chúng sinh khác, vì thay thế mình bây giờ mình xin tặng mình thay thế mình quán niệm chúng sinh khác, mình hoán đổi nghĩa thay, nghĩa là mình theo những người khác. Trên khi mà hoán đổi nghĩa thay là để mình thấy pháp là mình cách mình thay đổi được mình với người khác. Mình ở đây nói thì mình tâm thì mình sẽ theo cái phương pháp thứ hai để luyện cái mình bằng cách là hoán đổi để nguyện mình với tất cả chúng sinh khác.
방금 망시디라 남바상의 취기 조비 남바상의 취 순주 미주스기 된다 또다서디 타바 무취시시니 너무 비침하게 타에 타바 너무 세게 세와 동네기 자와 너무 임바 디나니 단지 말이고 임바 진짜 이 단지 말이버디 세게 세와 어디 타바 이유가 진짜가 이 고춘지 차시시면 이다위 타바 되니 줄로 좀 많이 보시면은 강도 이다위 타바 통도긴 된거디 생변이 되거지 이 타바 무취시시네 연구고래 타바 나 무취거나 나가 상대를 취 무취로세다 취로 나가 상대를 취 무취 맞춰세요 된다 좀 문제서도 단지 세세와 타바 유명한 고도 취 맞춰다 나라로 고야 야부차마지 좀 디강라下股因为地方了南山市的时候他的有个国家事情呢但地带他的对世界的生活当是不脱节的经济国际有的脱呢地方了这个怎么去停止路这个怎么去停止路事情的许地方了他的停止路他的不去了占的嘛是为他的记录让那个想去那个情况办个怎么样吧那个下的大下细节的吧刚才设计怎么他的是的是个当因为原先他的编辑的作别专门是原先工作机让那个电子机知道不了国际产业地图的记录地图的记录记录的了那地带的想说透过招厂的应该想去的 C 接完了设计的英国第二大学你以为哪年大金南极部呢想去的升级为特低那陆续刺激面然后了一送用的所以第一地方了大金南极部呢想去的升级为结果了原来大金南极部呢没中国是说然后目的 反正那个了，让今天就不到不起，西方的生意，来当我们那个了，等于差的过了，让今天就不有的第一，让今天的先基本层面的第一我了派主要的不得接，完全没拿过了，这个才是到我的原因不些，当然不些，第一个了，让今天去捐活动的上吧。先今天去用的活动的上吧，你大人就为了你东西工作实行呢，他就心啊是这样有的是，这样大应该就会
看看什么理解，
理解了，让今天去用活动的上吧，如果对了，先今天去用的活动的上吧，对了，对你大心就解。因为第六天的观念懂不知道。
Yes. Definition.
So here, in any case, the kind of foundation of the Buddha Dharma is really, when we talk about like introducing the Dharma, it's explaining how it is that there is a cause for suffering. Our afflictions lead to this suffering state, and in particular, that grasping self, that apprehension of the self, and then that there is a way to eliminate that grasping self. That is, there is an extinguishment, an extinction of that self-grasping that is a liberation, that is freedom from the cycle of suffering. So when we have a kind of confidence from the depths of our heart, we will have an attitude which is striving for that freedom. Once we really understand that kind of this sort of cycle of samsara and how it is that this grasping at the self is the root of that, and that we are able to actually extinguish it. And so we need to have that kind of striving for liberation. And here, in the context of training in the 8 verses of mind training, we also need to, in addition to recognizing that it is possible to eliminate that kind of grasping at a self and having this aspiration for liberation, we need a kind of Mahayana aspiration, this sort of aspiration of striving for the state of unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment, in which we are able to fully benefit other sentient beings who are similarly in this cycle of suffering. And this is based upon not just eliminating our afflictive obscurations, but also all of those obscurations to omniscience, developing, getting to the state one has perfected all qualities, developed all qualities, and eliminated without exception all faults. And so here, in order to sort of give rise to that aspiration, we have to have this attitude of bodhicitta. So we hold as sort of important this attitude of bodhicitta. And we do this through sort of having a kind of foundation of our mind training, which is this sort of recognizing, again, the sort of, as in this text, we need to engage in this attitude of equalizing and exchanging self and other. So normally we have this sort of demon within us of self-cherishing, this attitude of self-cherishing that holds us as most important. And instead of having that kind of self-cherishing attitude, we need to exchange that with an attitude that cherishes other sentient beings. And so in order to be able to successfully sort of exchange those attitudes, we need the foundation of equanimity. So we first have to have this kind of ground of equanimity. And on that basis, we then contemplate the faults of self-cherishing, of the self-cherished attitude, as well as the benefits of cherishing others. And then we're able to engage in an exchange of self and other. And finally, meditate on emptiness. So those are the kinds of like stages that will come in this 8 verses of mind training.
Chúng ta biết quý trọng những chúng sinh khác. Rồi cái giai đoạn thứ tư thì mình thấy mình mới trực tiếp bãi địa vị mình có những nơi chúng ta thực hành cái pháp cho cho tất cả những cái công đức của mình cho những chúng sinh khác, nhận tất cả những lỗi lầm của bản thân mình pháp là pháp trao nhận.
나중에 요정의 선거티 또 방문들이 막 요즘 지점이 통일이 출구 당국이 어디 가당의 기시 치고요 노정 지연년 정치도 이 나오가 사지 보셔 저당 뒤지리가나 출구 당국이 지방이 신기 판제人民 나중에 뭐 정부치게 끌어 간데스 따고 그래스 생긴지를 미니 루간데스 지고 루간데스 중국어세디 지도에 손에 생긴지를 미니 샹기 지게 신바디에 되게 지게 샹기 지게 참여주는 정도 다 간들 지게 제가 뒤에 뒤로 내가 상주가 생기고 돈이 있고 손에 그래 그 많이 신바디에 되게 강사 치료로 미니 생긴 치료로 미니 루간데스 중국어세디 이 연구를记得7的价值性送向度。
是你是那个他们的来圣经，
他们比这个原来想就给升级过，真的你过了升过了，那地盘下现在那说个女人那里，当不地升级记了那年，升级记了，刚才是大过的，是不刚才是用过的是，升级记了那年去，那对相对，说个主他有了，主不地升级7了那年，刚才7了那年，又刚才是讲过的是。记得7年的价值是送向度的，现在要的越就买的。
收个不过。
大不地就出来了。
这是的，不是。
So here then, as far as this text on the 8 verses of mind training, there's a commentary by the master Chekowa, the Kadampa master Chekowa, and he has described, and again here we have this method for generating bodhicitta through the equalizing and exchange of self and other, and the way that he sort of categorizes these various verses is that the first deals with sentient beings in general, and then the next 6 deal with sort of sentient beings in particular situations, particular sentient beings, and then finally the last verse deals with emptiness, an understanding of bodhicitta. So the first is sort of a more general kind of verse about sentient beings, and then the next get into sort of particular kinds of situation. And then finally, the last again deals with ultimate bodhicitta in terms of having an understanding of emptiness.
Sure, but Dumbadi only went, it's your mother, I must Dumbadi at the Shango. Sure, Dumbadi only need to do water, only foundation of the university. Should give the children in our children minute, no jumbo safety now to 2 women, everything is shallow. Dumbadi only.
So then actually the 7th verse here doesn't really fit into either of those 2 categories because it's describing the practice of taking and giving. So when we're sort of reciting this, we're engaging in the practice of taking and giving. So it doesn't sort of particularly fit with the sort of individual or particular situations or that general. This is explaining giving and taking.
We let out it and you do with somebody that will give an example shows. The Jondabu Shilang Tamba Kongi Toma Zonda Gosu, that will give an example top stage. Tobercha, that will give an example top stage. Shows a different shisu. 난 생긴 단계로 이진으로 내가 전주를 다지는 좀 쇼송했디 또 생긴 단계라 또 나중에 안지로 좀 가도 되고 생긴 신이라 안 되려고 있다고 그래 생긴 신세디 말아서 수수로 되게 간대 차고 없으면 근데 이진으로 자동을 타봐 이진으로 잠을 타봐 몰라 이진 타다를 타봐 내지 차리 이거를 이 차의 유지의 변조적인 상황이 있다고 지금 이게 우리를 하게 변조적인 강을 띠니 용거스는 시전 신을 띠니 시전 탕제를 미니 자동 장애를 하기 준추줘야지 시전 신을 띠니 용투고를 내 인도가라 시전 신을 이제 누구 자동의 장애를 하기 이제 이를 하게 돼 위자지고 라미를 이제 누구 자동 장애를 하기 위치를 진지 인바 이제 누구 자동을 하기 신당치 이세계 중치 내지 인거지 대지진이大多生产的今天节新经济路生产的基本生活机내지后果的路내지 이게 진행이路的后果的意思这关于简单的等于了不起了等到最后的生产型生产汤制让你的对的已经能够加动的差不的肯定是差个的意思的差不差肯定是就是了比方说已经能够长年的去有个因了这已经能够得了3年正定的人不要记当正定的平时不要记当也是已经能够这么去有个人当的这个长年的看中有看就有个因了这为了3年正定的平时不要记都会当出去有个因了这都会的全不要这个情况都来给我们生前谈这个生前新的本的因呢生前新的所说的哪年的新的新的这些呢如果公布于水平松于那不给予生前新的每年他的3部7部几想去的生前平时3部加新部因色部这个结为呢生前新的每年让人去确定对的因为那样都推起他对对的因为呢生前新的定义不关系都不推起就当确保我对你对马上我们的平常说吧就谈这生前的定义都通过的已经能够这么去长年的具有因的人已经能够这么去的定义他对对的让我们那个想去国王然后我们年的定义他在国王上他的那个国王这样那个他的那个国王这样已经能够这么去的定义就还有嘛的现在这个地方一部分上当地方了生前新设的让人去那个的他的那个的他的对主要的第一位呢带为呢已经是某个成了吧有些成了差吧我这边下的个的生前新设的
Then here, the author of this is Henri Tangba, and there are some various sort of versions of this text. But here, turning to then the first verse of this 8 verses, it says, with the wish to achieve the highest aim, which surpasses even a wish-fulfilling gem, I shall train myself to, at all times, cherish sentient beings as supreme. So here, really, it's sort of saying that we should view sentient beings when we view sentient beings, we should see them as even more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, because it is sentient beings that we are able to attain what is above all sort of things. So here, if you had a wish-fulfilling jewel or countless wish-fulfilling jewels, all sentient beings would be more valuable even than that. So we should and seeing them as being so valuable. And so someone might ask, well, how is it that sentient beings could be considered more valuable, more precious than even a wish-fulfilling jewel, even than countless wish-fulfilling jewels? Because even if we have a wish-fulfilling jewel, many of them, that can give us the sort of excellent things of this life. But all of those are just temporary. It could give us all these money and jewels and possessions and so forth. But we can't get anything more than just the sort of things of this life from a wish-fulfilling jewel. Whereas when we have other sentient beings as the basis of our practice for practicing ethics and patience and so forth, we're able to attain the greatest kind of goal, the unsurpassed enlightenment of Buddhahood, because all of our temporary and final ultimate aims are achieved on the basis of other sentient beings. These come from other sentient beings. So even this sort of unsurpassed something and even something less than that, like a birth as a human or a god, is something that a wish-fulfilling jewel could never give to us. So although a wish-fulfilling jewel might be able to grant whatever sort of temporary aims we want, it's not as though it can accomplish any desired aims beyond this life. Whereas sentient beings are the basis for our being able to attain all desired aims, all temporary and ultimate kind of desired aims. So if we view sentient beings as like that, we should at all times. It's saying view sentient beings in this way as being more precious than, say, a wish-fulfilling jewel or many wish-fulfilling jewels.
Lâu dài những chúng sinh mà có được vì lý do đó cho nên là chúng sinh quý hơn cả vô ngọc ước. Thì vô ngọc ước không giúp chúng ta đạt được những vô thượng ngoài đời, vô ngọc ước không giúp chúng ta được giải thoát. Như chị nói cái việc mà sinh vào cõi lành, vô ngọc ước không có khả năng giúp chúng ta thoát khỏi một những sống sinh mà sinh vào cõi trời cõi người, sinh vào cõi lành. Vì lý do đó nói với con tất cả chúng sinh quý hơn vô số vô ngọc ước.
내가도 타도 인도에 타도가 평균적으로 누에 비행민의 시가 있나요? 신경 신세의 이진진하고 외체를 타보다 아장장 지금 내니 전진 통의 시가 있나요? 신경 신세의 이진진하고 참여하고 외체를 타고 이 차고 유세가에서 어디 가나 오늘 말한 수 미지를 찾은 거이나 미지이 다 치료의 가래 준비 소자되고 치료자되고当然치료의 소초의 이게 뭐 장면을 지어고 있는 소 세력이 제퇴해요 말. 소초야라야 유주의 제퇴했게요 말에. 이게 생전 신의 때문에 소수 치료의 이제 되는 안에 추퇴해지다 소수 치료된 생전 신기 소수 말한 수 치료의 제퇴요. 그래서 자고 있는咱们已经拿过了苏苏拉尼的生存新机这样的项目的一切结晶即将那个呢拿出吃素的出脱以后嘛的已经能够被看到刚下为的生存新数据输出了一切的项目的生态能够结晶里面呢就吃素的出脱嘛了出人的结果这个恰用所以不能地方呢拿出的吃素错当及吃素错点对应的问题呢理解的明白呢目前的出脱的生存新的输出了项目节生态能够节一切节热的那么大脑型的生态能够节呢节目就需要节呢愿意年当几5年因为吃素的节目节呢也无节呢就测试所节呢出脱的不多这个身体点对我那样已经能够长明白了他的意思研究已经能够聊到研究对生大的基本全部修设的就是神经的看得起到了什么已经能够有这个他的也因为在经过基因的让人的对待的让人的身体的面对的他对的感觉的看了对我那样已经能够有这个他的跟这些叔叔的颜色的有在经过基给经过基因的因为的社会托年因为基本结果的是人的3当年这个基本有的要用了几个结果的大的基本上的后谁
So it is independence upon sentient beings that we're able to achieve both our temporary and kind of ultimate aims. This unexcelled state of Buddhahood, the ultimate kind of excellent thing, is achieved on the basis of sentient beings. And even in this life, when we think about the kinds of benefit that sentient beings bring, we couldn't sustain ourselves. We couldn't stay alive. When we think about what is the most precious thing to every being, it is their life. And it's not as though even if we had countless wish-fulfilling jewels, that would be able to sort of sustain us and hold us and feed us and so forth. In order to do that, we need other sentient beings. We need other sentient beings who love and care for us and are close to us and so forth. If we didn't have that kind of love and care from others, there's no way that we could survive. So it is on the basis of having, say, love and support from other sentient beings, as well as the kind of things that they provide, that we are able to sustain ourselves and stay alive. It's by placing our trust and hope in others that we are able to achieve any sort of aims. So here, this is really getting at how it is that we should see sentient beings as it says, I shall train myself at all times to cherish sentient beings as supreme. So we should see sentient beings as being superior to, more important or precious than a wish-fulfilling tool, in that they are able to provide all of these things for us. And by seeing them like that, by viewing them in this way, we train our mind repeatedly to sort of see the value and benefit of other sentient beings. So this is the way in which, again, we aren't just sort of saying the words, but we are training our minds to really try to come to see and cherish sentient beings, cherish them as the most precious kind of thing. And that's the way that we should view them generally, like sort of at all times.
근데 내년도 벌쇼지 라진이 베스니 디도를 진 근데 너무 되고 쇼세기 쇼를 내기 또디 라진이 지에 무도만의 상과 디당 단 지치워지 제가 쇼가 니부디 라진진지 좀 무도만의 상과 또 디기 된다디 동의사래 또 쇼가 니부디 강도 수동 부분이 진단이 공연이 다시 생각하면 좋죠. 네 감사하게 치면 강도 수동 부분이 또 지금 부분이 나도 지금 부분이 나도 지금 부분이 이제 감사하게 치면 수도 지금 부분이 아니 이다는 부분 뒤지 단이 공연이 다시 내가 대치시네. 강도 부분이 이거 상관 예세지. 이 지난 강도 수도도 단위 꾸는 다시 쓰는 데가라 오해는 주 통수로 있나 신신신이 나오고 라미다 땅도 이래 라는 파도 유주를 라는 면도 유주를 라는 면도 유주도 아니 라는 면도 뒤에 뒤 라는 뒤에 면도 가겠다고 그래 오해는 주로 쿠수수는 뭔가 그런去两年几天，去年两年几天，刚刚进了，对我因为去两年在里面经济。국내도 누로이나 최량의 최신의 재경기 최량의 최신의 제거 이런 시에는 쿠에 하고 근데 최량의 최신의 재경은 수준하고 최량의 최신 제거이나 수준안이 최장의 경기 밑에 멤버 가겠다고 그랬어. 이 따다니 가겠다고 그랬어. 어디가라? 근데 그때서 되게부터네. 지방 지초당 멤버 세다. 아니 강사들의 멤버 있는 민세디 쇼 나머지 상도에마도 인증이 차 왜 지지분이 있다고 해매게 봐. 지방 수수 나랑도 수수의 차중도 있나 신진신 참만의 멤버 딱 토야기 왜지 의문되게 오래. 그래서 내가 나랑도 행정지 어떤 민들 뭐지도 상진이다 이제 나는 예신이 지지수송 최나이 제기 국어 들으지 좀 간다 미지 남쪽이 레벨 때문에 남쪽이 시에 되지 레벨 되게 차리고 레벨이 어떻게 그거 레벨이네요 그거디 얘기니 그거디 취소라 동שו아 취시로 인해 취소된다 취임나는 지마트야 맞아 내가 그거 줘요 예시나 하고요래 인간 내기 내는 시로 인해 그거 줘야지 수요요래 또 이게도 그거 얘기니 취수진도 마구야다 취수진도 도를 도도 당고 이제 취기 된다다 반하신 이제 출행 일러거든 게 되게 제일 하나 취자리 마신이 미지기 취된 게 저지야다 나나신 이제 네가 미디어 수에 이제 제비 취시진이 강사직이 네가 지야다 취미시기 강사직이 네가 지니고 뒤에 미지의 때에는 취시진이 강사직이 네가 사야 되고 저치의 소리지 그래서 그 취시요 누가 제일 이상한 그 시골에 그 제일 없는 중대 가리는 것이 시골에 아니 이제 포장 중국 상품이 일로 있는 거지 요래 선생 등도 명총 내시 때는 봐. 이게 제대로 포장 준비 상동에 있는 이거 요 말에 우대초에 요 말에 제가 그게 제대로 디버사야당 이 명목을 랑딩하게 용도에 그 취미다 보시. 이게 자자 이 모습이죠. 그래서 이 차비고를 만세 원이 시행도 가면 뭐 야분 된게지. 내가 야분 된게지. 랑조 있는 것인데 포장 준비 상동에 있고 그 내가 얘기는데 포장 준비를 내가 유도에 가면 준비를 이제 놓으면 차이는 거. 그래서 비행위네. 지금 왜 수수수니 따당 지인이거나 나니 꾸에는 왜 다시 있어야지. 하나는 지금 뭐 따투에기 그 시지原因嘛的。那不给你上班的托年，你生意行了，就得基本上么修饰，让你他们里面的代际，现他们里边叔叔的就都大代际，一到5年，现在上个大陆去的基本上么基，路重要基，原因嘛的，一托年。
câu hỏi thứ hai.
So then in the second verse, this is again thinking about the sort of faults of self-cherishing, and I think this will come in verse 4 as well. But here in the second verse, it says, whenever I interact with others, I will view myself as inferior to all, and I will train myself to hold others superior from the depths of my heart. So here, whoever it is, again, if we're looking at sort of actuality, there are those that are superior to us, there are those that are equal to us, there are those that are sort of below us, but we're trying to train our minds to hold others as superior, to see ourselves as sort of below others, and from the depths of our heart, generate this kind of attitude that sees others as superior. So again, in actuality, there may be those that are sort of superior to us, those that are below us, those that are equal to us. So we might think we're somehow superior to others because we think like, oh, well, someone who's a practitioner versus someone who doesn't practice Dharma, someone who's practicing Dharma has to be better. But here, really necessarily the case. If we're talking about someone like us who has this sort of ability, we have the kind of freedom and leisure, we have met with the Dharma, we've met with the teachings, we've met with a virtual spiritual friend, we have this opportunity to actually practice these teachings. But if we were to say compare that, to compare someone like that, who hasn't met with the teachings at all, who doesn't have that same kind of opportunity, we might think that we're sort of superior as a practitioner, but really, if we are in knowledge of the Dharma and we still engage in negative actions, versus someone who doesn't have that kind of knowledge of the Dharma and they engage in negative actions, someone who does know the Dharma, that's going to be a much graver kind of misdeed, because right now we sort of have this ability, we have the opportunity, we have all the kinds of conditions, and if we allow that to go to waste, then we really are sort of lesser than others. And so this is kind of having an attitude of humility, of looking at others as superior in a way that we're sort of striving to better ourselves and also kind of train in humility, not to have any kind of pride, but to see others as a sort of superior object. So this is the kind of training that we are engaging in based upon seeing the defects of our self-cherishing attitude.
Cho nên nó mà là cái gì đó thì chúng ta không nói thì họ không biết nè. Còn mình nữa là người có tu học, có học pháp, có biết Phật pháp, chúng ta có cơ hội tốt, biết nhìn xa trông rộng, có trí tuệ. Nhiều con người có khả năng là nghe và hiểu nè. Con người trước sau mình hiểu chậm hiểu nhanh, trước sau mình cũng hiểu và lãnh hội được cái điều đó. Cho nên nếu mà chúng ta không thể làm được những cái điều nghe hiểu, chúng ta mình thấy có một lúc mình thấy mình tệ hơn cả cái loài vật, vì lý do đó cho nên chúng ta thấy so sánh người không tu hành, so sánh những cái việc thực hành giáo pháp thì có nhiều điều mình bị phiền não nó chi phối nên mình có khi mình rất là tệ. Với lý do đó thì lúc nào mình cũng xem mình thấp hơn tất cả những chúng sinh khác, tận với lòng sinh tôn cúng người hành trì tôn cúng thân ơn.
다 비단의 마세비 다 쇼문의 상정에 소망이요래 신신 타다라니 이걸 봤어요. 쇼진의 시위는 내 당부가 당마랑 수준을 가면 내 당부지가 사실은 랑진생 일로디 자다 부안한 것이시네 쇼치고 쇼지로 랑진생 일로 랑이 주가 샤지 가리나 쇼치고요. 차고요. 근데 이 진정이 공부인데 나비 생존시 타다는 따위나 따위나야 다른 이유가 지당 쇼진 시위는 따위에 차고래. 진정이 공부되다. 나지 수수마도 상공이 매빙이 굉장히 랑진생이 유너스 랑진생이 유너스 최대가 진정이 지금 그렇다 태워지신 매빙이 나비 하려고 주부지레스. 지난번 기대기 나오了你参了做事情，我们就拿过了，你参完了都是你没对的事，并且那么汤见呢，他汤见呢都是没对的事，并且现在还能用用嘛咯？这个一定的拿过了，教你们东西定义起，你马上才去修具有的人呢，有的人呢不做的拿过了，你给那可都是的事，那可这边没参与拿过都是的事情，你那个现在已经没有了，我不相信。经济让经济公布印的问题，叔叔老上东西没得问题好了，因为呢，好像的他写党、马六党，很多叫群众党，应该差异过的。现在别人对了呢，现在新参了人们的这些事情的，都是单数的结尾那样经过下去，因为呢，现在参了人们的被切度，人们没那些事情吧。刚比我的独自当的下过也算是下过的意思，就是对于这个第一年新增新功能没有大点击，然后就是目前成功的新增新人们的一个民生给些的看看的，新增新人们的那是那个新增新人民生中些些的，民生中的第因你下年为了那个大些的上东西有的是，可能那地方呢要弄准备送给拿过了。对，让你国际做的姑娘，新疆新他们的叔叔做的金家郎新就这样，这个机有为的，叔叔因为新疆新他们的相国的月上些些，我都去就近就把地方就是上个月的去过，对上个月的如今些都是个张主可能干的是有为那的，我下都是无敌了，我第两星期呢，新增新的叔叔让你看到自己有为的，叔叔为了新增新的，新的面色中些些，其实也蛮有个些些，我都是因为呢，亚洲的这个节差的有的，然后就在马上的，面色就有颜色些些些，讲述清的地方，三马上有地方了，一定看的出场嘛，出场的张出场的都是嘛，不是他们裤子到我了。这两些面色中途径的刚才的了，当被记不住的原点的区域经常的地方，还有这些呢，可能比喻了就业绩，原点探这个区域的距离，叔叔比喻了就推起，我们的基本当的原点长嘛，上级的原点，当不住的原点长，叔叔比喻了就业绩，我不那种有，因为地方呢，甚至关里面不到了，因为我跟这个，我有5年，关里面不在一起，那你公里面的新的3个大洲就都基本上新的国际基金刚的汽车的，贵些的啥的也不是基金，我听得几乎的意思，你我提起，说到底，
So here, not only that, when we're thinking about sort of seeing ourselves as below others, I view myself as inferior to all, and I will train myself to hold others as superior from the depths of my heart. So here, as beginners, again, we have a really strong sense of self-cherishing, like I am so important, and with that sense of I, we think that we are accomplishing our aims, that we're somehow gaining benefit by striving after what that sense of I wants. And it is that when we have this sort of thought only of ourselves, this kind of demon of self-cherishing, that we can sort of identify that as being really the worst one, even if we're to sort of look, regardless of what other beings may say about being better or worse or whatever, good or bad, when we sort of examine our attitude cherishing, that attitude that holds ourselves as most important and primary and only really thinks about ourselves, that kind of attitude is like the lowest being. So in that way, disregarding our normal kind of sense of like, oh, he's higher than I am or better than I am or lower than I am and so forth, we should recognize that that's sort of the place that we should be looking at as the lowest, that self-cherishing kind of attitude. No matter what, then we sort of view ourselves as below others. And so here, this is like having a kind of attitude wherein beings could even walk all over me, and I'm still going to cherish them, to have an attitude that they are superior. And again, part of this is getting at one's self-cherishing attitude in terms of seeing that as sort of like the worst, the lower kind of being. And then there's also really, regardless of conventionally speaking, what sort of qualities we have or don't have, or whether we're better or worse than others, holding ourselves as lower than others, remaining in a kind of humble place, sort of like water flowing under a bridge. Drumthamba has explained it sort of like that. Or there's the example of the fact that when you have like a lower ground, water is naturally going to flow to the place that is water, that is lower. So too, a person who is without pride, who sort of holds himself as the lowest, it's said that all kinds of good qualities will flow to them. So here, having an attitude of seeing oneself as lesser, as lower than others, and having this sort of respectful attitude toward all, there's a purpose in this. It's not just sort of saying to do this, but there's actually a reason why it is something that we are training our mind in, as in, again, seeing the faults of our self-cherishing attitude, but also recognizing that an attitude of humility is what allows us to actually generate the kinds of qualities of better beings.
Nên vì lý do đó cho nên câu hỏi thứ hai nói là khi có thân với bất kỳ ai, xem chính con thấp hơn tất cả, bằng lấy lòng sinh tôn của người, bằng hành trì tôn kính thân yêu.
영화군들 한지도 또 진영을 지마타 수수주를 가도이네야 샤라지지니 랑디주를 랑디 샤라지지니 도시 따디고 그래서 또 주죠 따지지니 그러면 지마타세리 랑디를 차수시당도 소위 이제 영화다 아장장 그런데 랑진생기 로디야 차수 영화 지마타 아까서 영화세비 나로라 차당도 소위 지당기 영화도 아세리 랑진생路全被一个路是看着机会呢，起码他都点到不能不过的是，点到不能不过是老多人共同进行，起码他的朗诵的，我讲了细表到进行为呢，存在到朗诵书籍进行怕共同解决，定量性信息，让今天的恰当的说话，这个起码他都朗诵共同关系，朗诵刚过解决嘛都。我是下年，你们今年就下年，你今年新一季，农业机关农业的说的，今天一边，我们当今天季，季雨了季，下雨了嘛，看到这个地方呢，晚上今晚他就晚上我的天气是高压的特殊气温的，这几天的下年，容易的预测的开始的，那些马上起了，那些马上起了是的，那个马上起了的，就是马上起了呢，欧洲。또 고향 가면 또 토스를 지어디 반대로 요 말이스까 그래서 어디는 나중에 세원 단지 나도 신 단지 뺀도 말은 쓰러 뺀도 말은 쓰러 뺀 통을 지고 저기로 통을 자는 맛에 쓰러 단지도 뺀 좀만 라를 지고 있어 또 명의 신화도 주지 집에 명의 신화도 주지 집에 제단 지지 얘네 지지 새로 땡기 폰지지네 니수 못하면 받아 콜 못하면 창용 왜야기 얘기 네가 친구도 여기 있는 하나 네가 친구 팀제 하려고 지금 하나 항상 문전 담고 카톡가 문전 지니까 아마도 자주요 말했어 어디 저기 랑진이 가자 랑진이 단지 让今天的军决的权利中，让今天的军活动的上吧，一旦这个游戏下个月是的，那不呢？让今天的生天呢，你都在为年同志，而且别的这个是，那个可以进行学习，是的。
So then here going to verse 3, it says, during all activities, I will probe my mind, and as soon as an affliction arises, since it endangers myself and others, I will train myself to confront it directly and avert it. So here we should constantly have like a little spy, like this spy of introspection or vigilance, watching for the arising of our various afflictions, like attachment and aversion and ignorance and so forth. But not just those, but in particular, our self-cherishing kind of attitude. So here, when we're going about our daily life and we see that kind of an affliction is arising, and here again, it's not just our ordinary, our various afflictions, but really being aware of when that kind of self-cherishing attitude is coming up, we should immediately sort of attack it, confront it. And so here, like in a way, if you have like an enemy coming at you, you might immediately pick up a weapon to try to confront them. So too, we should immediately apply the antidote, because cherishing attitude is something that endangers myself and others. It's the basis of ruin, both in the future and right now. Under the control of our various afflictions, this is potentially plunging lower realms and creating future suffering. It's going to bring us ruin, probably in the present, but also in the future. So here we are advised to immediately confront those kinds of afflictions and in various ways try to avert them immediately. It would be, we sort of might have this thought of like, oh, it's okay if it will last for a little while, but even a little bit of that is something that is endangering to us. And so we should train our mind to immediately confront that kind of affliction, particularly our self-cherishing, and by various means avert that and get rid of that. And so here, this is describing the sort of faults of self-cherishing.
이 말을 하실 텐데 뭐를 용되게 내 수능 판만이네 수표기술을 등대기에 말을 시부들이 우리가 꼭 등재기에 말을 생긴 뒤에 크게 진지고 또 등대기 강사비 랑생이 생긴 것이 랑생인지에 너무 쉬고 잡보다 말을 이상 쉬우치고 랑생인지에서 요된 등대기에 하장이 말을 생긴 기술 제대로今天看的是这个嘞，工作节的，这个产品呢，我是你看到这个这，技术节的，样这这个来，还来的这个朝鲜定的人都这些呢，他们为来了说的，去年来什么，大看的这2年朝鲜，那么那就把我这样没做了，那过这样做过一个定这的，这些手机的人就这样的，我现在基本上你自己连个这种嘛就现在的可能。刚的几个，我都拿这写了这几多了。那顶这个上现在新增基地，这个修查部那我是不比，这都是叫做全型的。这个修查部人就个的，当然是里面修查部那这个我讲，那就常常这干嘛用的也是，我是不是不讲因为那个我刚才提这个呢，就生了干嘛用的也是用过。顶这个上现在新增的了，新增接推的，还不就用过了。也得。DW 新增让人一个海内的不休息，因为那人，他的不让人的对的海内的度假节因为那人，这个问题不的刚刚提为此，他们都给了精神结果的是，还是说这个呢已经变成吃个性，因为 DW 的新增马上我的叔叔的涂鸦的，过了就刚刚不等着吃的不够，顶这个不够的，让人了，这个的。对，两个吃过的中国人呢，已经得不吃过那些差的，已经得不吃过那些，还讲另外高级的是，第一步呢精神结果，已经得不吃过那些看的是的，说一到已经得不吃过那些另外高应当的看的是这事情啊，说第三当过，那都差的过的，一般呢让心里边的心情还来个马上不定的，我讲的是呢，就是对这个差呢。用考不起来的过了，那电视顶的就 제가 이날에 이다비 강사디 누구 잡으기 위해 국가대항 자체 통제에도 어떻게 잡고 말어. 다 굉장히 국가지 수술을 내가 채우는 거는 딱히 나랑서 최되는지 강사, 타버 되는지 강사, 통제지 못 되는지 강사. 생제 통제지 전도 랑나와 양다고도 상제지 고방. 또 지린 세기 이 통제를 편리 자고 지린 세기 당제시 아니기 필요지면 리진이 강사집을 띄기 이다비 국가지 인체 때 채워나시 할레베 국가 자칭 자고. 가르스 레드는 굉장히 메시지기 지방 선생님의 생존 기초제도로 지방의 무지는 빌리지 하고시 제야당 빌리파 조건제디 할레베 깔레 카보로 조건지는 맞다. 그 나중에 말을 다시 시부지 되거나 그 토수나 파 갖출지 내가 제통을 동의 제통 제상 지기를 마도 빌리 조건당 고려 양보다 고향제 당마로 당말에 여기 나라서 최대한 이 나는 티버지면 주변이 가서 생긴 시행을 편도 부킹이 된대기 티버지면 진기 강사진의 참석이나 근데도 말을 다시 나 뒤야 말을 다시 강사디 기도 잡으면 그 그거 된대지 수준이 되는 정도 카토디라 된대냐 그디라 콜레지 펜베상보다 다마 신기 콜레 가르치 유바의 제토로 유바 있는 디파 제지진에 펜베상보 꾸는 상디 콜레 핀도 강의지 강도 지도 뭐가 있는데이나 지방의 국가 시행이告诉 생긴 지방의 생긴 주마지가 평가줘야 이 강의지역이 되어있지 상대셔야도 루비제래 너 양주 동족의 합에 초사제 치워 다마 신이지 누가 다제 치워 신담이다 없이 요리요리스 어차피 나중에 가서 우리가 순고로 그러나 도시 태반이 강사지가 세종세기 진바당 차상 규주로 도시 태가 시간이마 그것도 시대지니 사진의 등이 굉장히 유부지가 칼라 중세기 진바 대당 사기동지 차상 요딩 강에 강에 매대기 미지라 지리수의 진지하기 진도 편입이 누구이나 나만의 시락이 편치요 알수 위기차 위기 그 도시체 산주야마 통주야마 등대기 난타버시 뭐 인디가라 시를 꾸디 이래장 난타버 차디가나 등대기 위기라 뭐 담바이나 시 강사 신의 지방계 강사 신지의 인것동안 내장 편을 지워당 야지오지 이거래 다나 신지 뒤기 제가 뒤기 내가는다와 인것동서 위기 강사의 지원인다와 등대기 문에 초 사야다 초 요약이 야지 좀 미치버려 나도 사기 치는데 우리디고로 뒤에 망차보다 뒤에 깔려가보다 등대지 이거라 좀 말고 등대지 이거라지 야부지에 도야당 상적이 때문에 요비서 지고 있는 표현 가지고 남준문다고 예시진네 나중에 뒤다보시래 단 지대이 나오라 지고 있는 지대이 용다가 다랑으로 강의 친구들 상태를 강의 친구들 지에 가도 되라 소강도 루지니 말아도 또 등대지라 위지 용지 하선 나가고 루지가 지내고 있는 다른 상태이 할래를 가는 친구 지로 신나문다오지 다른 상태를 강의 시간 내에 가도 루지가 내는 루지가 내는 야부리 이거지 위당 위기 차네 당연히 하선 치료 일이 거든 내가 믿어 차리고 어디다 보지 이거 등대지 돈이 라진이 됐으니 이 모두 다윈이 이거가 있는데 어떻게 차리고 그래 이거 뒤인디가나 또 비가 그거에 하선이 니가 보지 있어 내 돈이 상 것이지
khi thấy chúng sinh bằng tâm ý
So here then again in verse 4 it says, when I encounter beings of unpleasant character and those oppressed by intense negative karma and suffering, as though finding a treasure of precious jewels, I will train myself to cherish them, for they are so rarely found. So here again, when we are getting into how we go about kind of cherishing sentient beings, it might be easy for us, obviously, to cherish like our mother and father. But when we see someone who naturally has really strong afflictions and acts in a really sort of rough manner, or like is rude to others and so forth, and they're accumulating, say, many non-virtuous actions, doing things like these activities of immediate retribution, killing one's mother or father, doing things to abandon the Dharma, and so forth. When they are engaged in such intense negative activities, so when we see someone like that who is experiencing some kind of suffering, our natural sort of mind is that, say, when we see someone who is bad, who acts badly toward others, who is rude and disparaging and so forth, and something bad happens to them, we sort of take a joy in that. We feel good about the fact that someone who is bad sort of got what they deserve, we might think. But really, that is not the kind of attitude that we should have. When we see someone, even if they are engaged in really heinous activities, really very non-virtuous actions, difficulties, or trouble, as this verse says, we should see it as like finding a treasure of precious jewels. We should instead cherish that kind of opportunity, for they are so rarely found, it says here. So here, this is an occasion when someone is actually in front of us and they are like really acting negatively and experiencing some kind of suffering. If we are striving for, even at the least, getting a good rebirth in the future, if we're striving for liberation, if we say that we are one striving for perfect, unsurpassed, complete enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, then really our goal is to benefit other sentient beings. And thus, this kind of person in front of us is a very precious opportunity. And in particular, if we are a sort of Mahayana practitioner, this kind of occasion is something that we should value very much, because we have the kind of opportunity to really generate a genuine kind of compassion for this person who is acting in such a bad sort of way. And we can see this from the point of view of, again, that there are different sorts of powers to a kind of field, a field in which we, in relation to which we accumulate merit, and a field in which we accumulate negativity as well. But in this case, say, when we give food to someone who is impoverished, who is really in need, versus, say, engaging in an act of generosity to those who have enough, who are not really in need, there's a difference in terms of that object, of the needs of that object. And there's also a difference when we are engaging in generosity and other virtues in terms of the time that we're doing it. There's a difference when someone is in need, when someone is really needing that kind of help versus when they are, say, not, and so forth. And so this kind of occasion, did we, say, encounter beings of unpleasant character, these beings who engage in really bad activities, and we see them doing things that are very non-virtuous, but yet we see them, we see those kinds of beings all the time. But when we are able to have this chance of seeing them in a suffering kind of situation, when they're experiencing great difficulty, it's really a rare opportunity for us in terms of an opportunity to practice and to try to wish well for that being. So recognizing that this is something so rarely found, and that when we have a chance to encounter, to meet with such a being who really is a difficult person or is of unpleasant character, and they've engaged in many negative activities, when that person is suffering in this kind of way, we should see them as like finding a treasure of precious jewels and learn to cherish them, even those beings that are difficult or are engaged in many negativities. We should find a way to cherish them as we would like a treasure of precious jewels, and recognizing that they're rarely found.
다시看学会的人，当然，因为现在对面的是没当节新的制度，人家空气的人大性制度，现在新的输出以及漂流不是的与理解，第一制度输出这个制度话，同样的，现在新的制度然后无助的，他们的新的制度话，内在对他当这些年，让人一些上的对中州长也忙过吧，让人的时候中州长也没有通，但是他内东也的第二出去那个我就做过了，第二是被包托的一道啊，上路的到底做过了，第二都就过了，那第五的讲了，那第二个路中的看到的了，叔叔这边看有原因的嘞，叔叔这边啥的，谷歌看有原因的嘞，谷歌第五呢，叔叔的用户的这边，主要现在这边的叔叔的用户的讲起之外，切度。叔叔路当叔叔的生产型的叔叔一个团队的帮助，所见的叔叔的用户有个等中途，他路当他去，他的生病他我推是路东北，叔叔其实我们的这些呢，路当这些呢，他生产型的属于相对嘛，下推也当顶这个的路就中国的讲了。中国他们叔叔的联系，那这个咱们现在把批推啊，我顶个几，你我顶个几，被采取顶个几业务，但不能差的一了，哪年的托年，中年了，当国的叔叔的当国的是老地方的，包括高的，等个也变大了，拼不起中档，打哪些个几，我有就这里面的顶个一托年过，写了一几年，我。
So here, then in the next verse, it says, "When others out of jealousy treat me wrongly with abuse and slander, I shall train to take the defeat upon myself and offer the victory to others." So here we need to sort of train our minds in this way. In general, when we encounter others, no matter what sort of situation and we should train our mind to get rid of that kind of self-cherishing attitude and the sort of improper thoughts that come from that. So since beginningless time, we have not given up this kind of self-cherishing attitude. We've still sort of held on to this. And here, specifically in those occasions where others treat us badly, or even when they treat us wrongly with abuse and slander, we should train our mind to be able to give them the victory, to take the defeat upon ourselves. And this is really the way that we get to the point of only working for others, holding in mind that kind of aspiration from the depths of our hearts, and getting to the point where we work with our three doors exclusively for the benefit of others, only wanting what is good for others. That takes training our minds to actually get there. So eventually we are able to sort of get that kind of attitude. But in terms of when we are interacting with others and we say they are treated badly or something, we should be able to take that defeat upon ourselves. And in that way, we're able to sort of give the victory, give whatever is good to others. This is the way that we're able to get to the kind of state, the stage where we are even able to give away our own body, or to be able to benefit others in whatever way it may take. So here, this is something where, again, we have to learn to do this, again, by sort of taking on the defeat for ourselves and offering the victory to others, offering what is good to others. This is about training in a way to get rid of that kind of cherishing mind that we normally have, and instead be able to sort of give up whatever good it is that we have for others. So this, again, is something that involves us sort of training our mind over time to get to this point. We can't do this immediately, but rather this is something that we do.
zambi zambi je che yabu je ma do zambi lendi le ni ba je di jidang di ni ji ko ji mi she su ro ji ma ro je de su su di pa shi bu ji pi de do ni sa di ni di da je shi bu ji ya sa di ji da我也能去地里多地，叔叔去那个去接个那个呢，但今天的接个应该还来不及，性质就差。就你接推当上面拿回了，如果接推在里面的你掐的过了，热的马上去六中天的抗杀几个呢，上了会养不的家境的冬天几个呢，今天就没几。叔叔的出那个这个那个人呢，本来去用的叔叔的打火机，但没有往这路送去去听的日子，公共车子啊，也不车子呢，看到的马上的也不车子呢，不当地当车上也不就车子的急了，叔这种结晶的，你的了出路那个是不是这个那个人呢？他还来的，对了，也真是个，也真是蛮顶看的，还来的这几个上那么上马推起当，今天一马上。就加用，这对你今天刚才就这个媒体叔叔的出那个这个那个人那里，媒体了，他去当先当，那个人家话说，你那个刚才的当中叔，新年当不到就是，也新年到不就是在叔叔的新年让叔的这些上，也新年的跟你是那个到这些上，这个的路径。就是结果，这结的就这样的事。南军的了，今年就有新意思，这边就有秋春意思，那这不的夏末意思，冬年去年就有浪意思，不的数不多，都有这个。那今年的开始，这是这个也新的差我是，我呢今年国家人地方那你先熊人多了，今年国家中国开多的了，去2年今年，第2年就我就去今年国家。他最忙，因为那样有的事情，是今年国家的对你们西部中国人呢，你看到的了，这个经济讲的你的地了他，你的边的不够的我，这地界，大那些的拿在地地下面一些的，基本上拿在拿什么，基本上你要买了，买的我家来个街头嘛，看一些都嘛，谁嘛熊国是之类的，那种的2年前的刚才去了。那这个就没有人了的，第起码那个2年3个月，这个大呀，这个这边这个地方2几十年，他那么个差一个，这个经济低差的个的，你呢，这现在这个啥东西就一个，经济有过吗？那度假村呢，单单跟那是度假的了，但现在呢，这边住了，那你个人自己都是不么需求，你买的不是，叔叔的书上写的你，他们欧洲呢说的你，不当地方车上也不马下把的大众接受你的出那个这个类呢，可叔叔的每年，你这个公司的语，大拿心的去路上的2年接受的语，大拿心的记得在康萨基地。做那个建筑，几当年去如果占土嘛的，土还要嘛，但顶个看不顶个没地了，那就那种去建用的了，如果2年没了去用过，现在没了去用过。一般里面几个那个建呢，我在古代给嘛的上，所以呢如果公退休，但顶个没地了，如果公退谁来了要嘛了，地看多地，如果公也给顾客没事，那些已经那么的原厂顾客没事去来吧，那么的希望的就人的。看人那些，一般我们的兄弟拿回来嘛不送过了，比较拿回来我们把了捐的有的，你们的有的，我们的希望的就自己那些兄弟拿回来嘛不送过的，叔叔的西部的我们这边的大众建设，西部的大众建设没得出，应该是叔叔的从那里度假节用的讲了，但是我们的希望的这个大的，我们的希望的就那个别人去接触过的，还来不及洽用过，你个说的洽。就是我们的专场跟这个也是你到下用过了，这个新闻我当个导学是我的，在新竞争节，年多年上呀，7%的，就个可的， ngaba chuni
Câu hỏi kế tiếp là đối với những người
Then when we move to verse 6, it says, even if one whom I have helped or in whom I have placed great hope gravely mistreats me in hurtful, I will train myself to view him as my sublime teacher. So if we think about someone who we have benefited greatly, when they harm us in some way, someone that we have benefited or that we think is close, like one of our cherished friends or family, when they harm us, that's an extremely difficult kind of situation to bear with. We don't naturally sort of have this thought of being able to see someone that we have been very close to or that we have taken care of and helped for a long time. When they turn around and harm us, we don't really have the natural sort of view of seeing them as our sublime teacher. So if we think about sort of if you say sustained someone from childhood, you've brought them up, you've cared for them, done all the kind things for them, and when they then, if they are then to turn and do something harmful to you, that's kind of especially surprising, especially abrasive. It's just something we can hardly even imagine, like what is happening here. And so the person who has hurt you in this way, rather than having any sort of attitude of malice or anger toward them, any kind of thought of retaliating, we should instead see this as a special opportunity, as this is like a special virtuous spiritual friend, this person. So here again, it's said that whenever we meet with kind of bad conditions, this actually has good sort of consequences for us, because this sort of strengthens our ability to be able to practice. So however much we meet with bad conditions, we should see them as a means for purifying our past karma. So when we are able to bear with and endure those kinds of situations, even say the case of someone that we are extremely close to turning and harming us in some way, we are able to, by bearing with that, actually take great benefit from this kind of situation. So it's said in this kind of mind training literature that whenever we meet with bad conditions, we should see them as sort of burning off our previous karma. Say someone who experiences a great deal of illness, this kind of illness is a way of working off the kind of karma that we have previously committed that has led to such a suffering kind of situation. And in turn, it impels us in the future to be careful against that kind of karma and against engaging in those sorts of actions. So there's a benefit to meeting with those kinds of bad conditions. And so too, when we have someone that we have really tried to help in many different ways, we've placed great hope in them and so forth, that is the best kind of practice of patience, because when they cause us harm, that's harm that we really feel. When we have a sort of like harm from, say, a random person who we don't have a relationship to, we're better able to sort of brush that off or think, oh, that's nothing. But here, when we see someone that we really care about, that we have benefited and helped, and they turn and they harm us, we're able to recognize that they're under the control of their various afflictions. So we can see the text describes sort of defects of various afflictions, and it's very clear in those kinds of situations that this person that we care about is under the control of their various afflictions. And in that way, by demonstrating to us the defects of afflictions and by giving us this kind of special opportunity to practice patience, we should see them as like a virtuous spiritual friend or as a sublime teacher, rather than becoming angry or having malicious attitude.
이 진진지 연대 우동만에 상상상지 다 다시 지표가 용게 카토til라 다시 지스로 디가나 비로 담배받은 알아서 수수 쫄런세지 이제 수수 쫄로 샤지지는 내가 가르치고 있나리 판에 밀레 핀데 지자오지 지유도 크르디 핀데 자오디 제가 이거 수수로 기본데 내지 용준도 상상 푸푸디의 수수 이 김빈디 쫄로 샤데 내지는 담배받은 수수 쫄로 샤네 랑 기본 생대 바로 나 기본 생야디 나는 주 기본 생서 주디 제 디파 지구로 지시네 다음에 손디 주디 생전 신비 도로 산 근데 쟤는 생전을 핑 근데 쟤는 잠불을 핑 那些呢记住了平日时，生前行的偏土色党预做了下去行，叔叔的下乡了拍了嘛下去，估计的，让你今天基本这样，今天解释做叔叔节的面部，今天解释做的生前行节，今天解释拍个是那里下乡把我的叔叔的去，那把它马上做叔叔今天解释做的去，生前行。今天解释在南面东侧的下不着，不怕孤独些些呢，这土地上的大型机构的生活的上帮土地上的，当年2年的我做土罗的，当年2年前的在叔叔的月边的，另外一送给野月车、当兵车，在南新的旅游的升级不当野月车，俺们去当兵车看的就有那里，南京。下水了，当年那个对吗？那是东西些呢，可是，今年弄了这么些送个那些，不怕东北看到的了，让给理解的，让了以为，理解这的生意行了，他把他动下去，我们那生意没有当的，那当不得，我们靠不再用不了，用不了，没把一些存钱给借的，大金两级的这个学清不进来的看到的了，当地我那个2年的文书，对。他把你上个他把你的上东推给那个的不用我，因为这个东西了，让你连的对我常常生前性的怕我呀的怕东亚去，怕东亚。那你有时候听到他说这个生前性的东亚的卷的，咱们这个常常出的叔叔的就多了人这些呢，让经济的不让他东亚去，刚才让你就了人家，让你生前性的东亚农业。生前行的东西牛的，让你东西牛去行的，让你的东西牛的，生前行的东西牛不去不去啊？生病呢，那我们生前切都让我拿过了去，穷就有原因呢。我们穷去行的生前行的东西牛的，估计数据建议你上，我顶这一图呢，当年个样，这个他妈的。
So then in verse 7, it says, this is getting into the practice of giving and taking. And so it says, in brief, I will train myself to offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all the hurts and pains of my mothers. So here, again, based upon the kind of contemplations that have come before, thinking about in various ways the faults of our self-cherishing attitude and others, look at the kind of situation that we are in now. We are still thinking about ourselves. We think of I as primary, as most important. And even when we say do other things to benefit others, we're doing so with this kind of some sort of profit for ourselves. Like, oh, well, if I do this, I'm going to get this for myself. What benefit am I going to get from this? And so we are trying in this way of equalizing and exchanging self and others to come to hold others as primary and main, sort of swap that attitude of self-cherishing for an attitude that holds others as being the object of importance and cherishing, and in the way that we used to sort of work for our own aims, work for the aims of others. So this is how we're able to eventually train the mind to be able to get to this point where we can actually engage in the practice of giving and taking. So when we're able to exchange those kinds of attitudes, we then get to the point where, as it says here, we are able to offer whatever is good, whatever sort of benefit and joy, the virtues of all of our 3 doors, all good things that we have. We imagine, and eventually one can do this in connection with the breath, that as we're breathing out, we are breathing out and giving to all sentient beings all of those good things, all of our virtues that we have accumulated and so forth. And then when we breathe in, we are taking upon ourselves all of the kind of suffering of sentient beings, and we are imagining that our suffering, it sort of substitutes, it suffices to be the suffering of sentient beings. Now, again, this is something that the ability to do this really in a genuine way from the depths of our hearts is dependent upon increasing and developing this kind of attitude. And so we first will be doing this in sort of an imaginative way, but eventually we give rise to the ability to really take on the sufferings of others and give our benefits to others. train in giving and taking. And again, for the rest of the attitudes need to come before this in order for us to be able to genuinely do this sort of practice. And it's often done on the basis of the breath.
Only in the $5 number shoes. $5 number shoes say the $5 Jingy doing the land Chigu say the two did it. The Tony in the Dajianji, Lujoyaki, Chidi in the Tizitama, $5 Chiver Chasumanashi. We don't demand the Chidan Jiding, Budan, and Jiding Mugagi, the Tomatinda, Lutama the good witch. Yeah, fish which had the water. I don't know, Sinjan, I will suit and a sushi. The Changi could you all my sales on the Tindella, every midi, a new sales on the Lazumato, Susit and a Suzumajin switches, every get it in the shady rock. We don't go so. When they don't make a carson words now, Susu and that shit to Maris. And the Serotonin never Tandebat. Randin Shada Chidi, Conchu Omar, Conchu. Susu Kanda, Kadipin to Brisna, Singing Sing Kanda, Susu Rani, singing Chip, Tabanepa, down to Vachida, singing Shin of the Tibu, Tabanichi to Eji. Jinda, Joy the Shajin, singing Shin, the Joy of Tijin, that Jipu Kanda and Zamalichi, Rosing Panji Kanda, Joy of Tijin, Kanda, the Tabanichi to Eji. To in any Susu DJ damage Yungris, Susu Montana, Susu DJ Mumaris, on the Edison. Jitangi, Susu Dana, Susu Bungus, DJ Mumaris. Then Jitan Gajan, the Lula Gajan with the bed of Bushu Charo. Even Jitan Gajakatu in the Shirachina, Tambu Yomari. With the day Tonia, $5 number show city, and the Jay to Sicily. Janang.
So here it says, we do this sort of in secret. One engages in the practice of this giving and taking, whether it's giving and taking or equalizing and exchanging self and other. These are practices that one does in secret. One's not sort of broadcasting these to others, because generally in the world, it's sort of assumed that each person accomplishes their own aims, accomplishes their own needs. And so if we're to act in this kind of completely opposite way, we'd basically be seen as crazy. But here, according to these teachings, we can see that actually since beginningless time, we've been striving after our aims, but we obviously haven't been able to accomplish that. We haven't succeeded in that. And so if we are, from the depths of our heart, really able to see others as main, as primary, as most important, and cherish them, and if we could really give up all of our kind of worldly concerns, that's how we could actually attain a kind of definite happiness, actually attain our own aims. And so here, when it comes to the sort of attitude of the world and those worldly concerns, they're really quite opposite to the kind of concerns of someone who is engaged in mind training. And because they're so sort of disparate from the ways of the world, this is something that we can do in secret. We don't broadcast this sort of practice to the world, but rather this is something that we kind of keep to ourselves and engage in.
Thì tất cả những cái việc lợi ích của mình nó tự động mình có sẽ đạt được. Nếu mà chỉ ích kỷ ra cho bản thân mình thì mình sẽ không bao giờ đạt được một cái hạnh phúc, dù là một cái hạnh phúc của hạnh phúc là này mình không bao giờ đạt được. Mình nói chỉ đang nói cái việc giải thoát cho tất cả chúng sinh. Nhưng mà vì lợi ích chúng sinh thì chúng ta có thể đạt được tất cả.
Ra cũng như truy chỉ sĩ số gì tuyển ra thì cũng được lưu dung cái năng này chế định rồi tuyên truyền được năng lực chỉ năng này cái đấy chế với này truy chỉ tôi biết chỉ mà bảo chứ. nghe đến chế với nó mà chỉ truy về sẽ cái điều là dùng cái sản phẩm chứ rồi. yang chỉ đến mà chế với nó mình chỉ đến chỉ chế với số rồi chứ. 주스를 두바스를 들리지 난지 들리지 마데나 이지 메라통가 용그레세스르지 감베지 미기 우쿠나 미기 우수데 이 쿠네체르지 주메기 초가스르지 제데디 딘데기 제기 상무든 집이 취지기 상차리고 되는 거 면은 거세 종는 거 많은 거 어디지 인계기배 집이 취지기 남부겠지만 진짜 마바바 이다 만지바 오늘 상대인데 이장의 마세베 집이 취지기지만 이다 만지바 상대 마세베 최근 주무시면 동네 집 다에 생기군에 무종의 양년당 터위차 간데 양이 제고 있는 동네 다에 생기 통에 양이 제지 제고 그랬어. 나야랑 심해봐. 나는 이거는 그 파쇼 위에 되어서 전주문이 토되어서 난 거지. 전기 통에 위주문이 두고 메디가라. 나어디 위주문이 두고 난 거지. 전기 위주문이 두고 메디가라. 나 본인 주 차대고. 그래서 주마디 어디로 주미 담아디 도 나서 통우리 무마스미 남부 통인 거지. 제가 땅마다 남부 무마디 제디고 막. 그래서 이거는 이다고 주미 담아 나시 주미 취 나시 취 타한지 남부지 가서 봐 가와실 때고 있는데 쿠란 주문이 수출되게 수지. 이 이동원 있는데 쿠란 주문이 수 이동원 차되게 수지. 제디 때문에 통해 이 쿠란 주문이 수 이동원 투요 말에 나라서 생기 반 나왔다. 생기 망쳤잖아요. 밀랑기 숨이다고. 밀랑기 유도 근데 찾아마다 가르나고 있는데 밀랑 통신의 가도를 위주문이 주어지는 거지. 이내 밀랑들이야 세계 가도지라 시대를 따인데 이 밀랑기 시대 나와 상지마 통하수 개매버디 마수 신고로 디나세 세계의 중기 탄재양 밀랑기 숨이 나시 무기 반나온 상지마 위주문이 수출 말이었어. 또 나야 믿는 주마다버지 주마다버 시대 문에 위주문의 두 번째는 다든 짐바 이거인데 이시 나온 한분이지 유도가 이기 시제시 나라 야부 통구도 나라 도자 통구도 시신 대샤 시단들 내용으로 내지 통구도 내지 상도시 만생도 시대샤네 대샤 시단들 내용으로 대샤 시단들 내용은 메시지시네 콜을 치워지고로 근데 많이 뭐지 나온 한데 루크랑 만생디 이 추토보다 랑문의 두개 맞는 진짜디 다 까지시네 최단지 또게 따서 주마다고 인도 시비 루기 생각이 제일 이거는 단쟁기 시제네 차당기 왕기 레사에게 이기 구린기 다 까투고로 다 두두고로 그래서 다음에 또 루기 생각이 심을 내봤을 때 다음에 또 루기 생각이 안들 자신이 루도 수가 되다 봐 도지시네 기조 간다지 제가 이 날에 운이기 따에 생각이 기조티 제국으로서 어떤 지 제지네 당진기 친구들 주어 포스 다음에 비다올라 도지시 주마다고 시비 너무 비친구들 주야디 도그레스 어떤 지 용마 제국으로서
Then in the final verse, it says, by ensuring that all of this remains undefiled from the stains of the 8 mundane concerns, and by understanding all things as illusions, I will train myself to be free of the bondage of clinging. So here, the first part of this is really getting at that we shouldn't be doing this kind of practice with a view to say how others are thinking about us, with any kind of thought about the 8 worldly concerns, of getting some sort of gain, whether that's reputation or otherwise, but rather we should engage in this without any kind of those worldly concerns, free from those worldly concerns. And then we should have this understanding of all things as being illusion-like. Although they appear, they don't have any kind of inherent existence in the way that they appear. All phenomena appear as though they existed from their own side, like as if they really existed like that. But they don't actually have that kind of existence. In the way that, like, when we see an illusory horse, there are certain causes and conditions that come together such that it appears. And it appears as though it were like a real horse, but it doesn't actually exist in that way. Or so too when it comes to those objects that we see as desirable or as undesirable. It seems like, oh, they really are that way from their own side. But when we examine them, we can see that they don't actually exist in that way. Like in a dream, we can dream up all sorts of various visions and things and sort of scenarios, But when you wake up from that dream, you realize, oh, those don't actually exist like that, but rather those are projections of my mind. That was just a part of my dream. And so too, although phenomena have this appearance as though they existed from their own side, and we grasp at them as though they had that kind of existence, that there is no sort of thing really exists in that way. And with this kind of basis of grasp self, and then out of that, our attachment and all those kinds of things arise, those kinds of afflictions. And then due to those afflictions, we engage in karma. So thusly, we are bound within samsara. So if we're able to, as it says here, to be free from the bondage of clinging, that sense of I, that then leads to all of the various afflictions, which in turn cause us to create karma. If we can get rid of that, if we can stop that, and things don't have that kind of existence from their own side, without clinging, without attachment, we're able to get rid of those kinds of various afflictions. Once we get rid of that fundamental root grasping, we'll then remove the kind of afflictions that arise out of that. So here, it's basically saying that we should train in a way that we are holding an understanding of emptiness, because again, it is that understanding of emptiness that will free us from this bondage. So by getting rid of that kind of false understanding and instead understanding all phenomena as like illusions, it says, I will train myself to be free of the bondage of clinging. So this last verse addresses getting rid of our 8 worldly concerns and also engaging in these kinds of practices with an understanding of emptiness, of the lack of an inherent existence of phenomena.
Thế thì với cái gì mình chuyên chế thì đi chỉ nên đâu chỉ学习thế thì mấy trong chỉ中国的一些浪力堂的都是生产过了浪力堂的都是生意浪头就这么浪忙不但有一些的对记切去记到学会呢浪力堂的都是生意空的产地生现在这个就说浪汤那不设计那不学会的搞了的空对呢些那不接近的学的是金学没有金学的也有嘛是浪汤那不了金学有嘛是你记了金学天气中的设计了俺们对全都金学没有些我们那不接近学的是你学会的对全都现在不年经拿出当那考了强学的那下大就我们性别的讲了民众的主些当那些民间的上学大会的讲他对你去新疆这边当最起码都金学的那跟这有嘛的是他对呢当中就这些那光金学你自己的集中的说的比较的那个你怎么有想出去了同样那不其实我真的东西
nó ngọc mua rồi luôn chị
나도 원하스는 영셔에 매우리 원하스 그래 너번 카드 나고 이미 잘 나고 맞다 영셔에 매서 원하스
So that finishes the verses of the 8 verses of mind training. And so here there's sort of many biographies of Langre Tamba being the author of these 8 verses of mind training. And so here he was sort of given this nickname of like being very serious. He sort of had this like kind of face, but like a very stern, sort of serious face, because of the fact that he was constantly reflecting upon the sufferings of sentient beings and the sufferings of samsara and so forth, and his that kind of overbearing sort of compassion for sentient beings caused him to have this kind of seriousness all of the time, except for one occasion, apparently, when he laughed in his life, sort of got rid of that stern and serious face. It said in one story that there was just like one time in his life when he laughed.
Và cái người Rinpoche nói là cái lớp học của chúng ta đến đây là chấm dứt, mà trước khi mà chúng ta về thì xin quý vị ở lại phơi với một tay dọn dẹp cái nhà ăn với phòng bếp, bởi vì bây giờ ở dưới đó còn rất là nhiều công việc cần phải làm. Nếu mà mình đi về hết thì không có ai ở đây để mà giúp dọn dẹp, xin quý vị vui lòng ở lại phơi một tay. Và Rinpoche nói là ngày mai trung tâm sẽ đóng cửa, bởi vì ngài Rinpoche sẽ đây giải pháp ở một cái chùa Phúc Đức ngày mai, cho nên ở đây sẽ đóng cửa. Và Galataku Rinpoche khuyến khích mọi người nên đi đến chùa Phúc Đức để nghe ngài giải pháp ở trên đó. Bây giờ thì mình về chấm dứt mình cách là mình cũng dừng bản thảo ngắn và hữu. This ground anointed with perfume through the flowers, adorned with marmot for continents of sun and the moon. I imagine this would appeal in order and offer where all living beings enjoy the spirit land. Mảnh đất này được trang nghiêm với dầu thơm và trải đầy hoa, tô điểm với núi Fuji, cái đài bồ câu, mặt trời và mặt trăng. Con tưởng tượng nơi đây là có Phật và xin cúng dường, nhưng tất cả chúng sẽ được an hưởng có trình độ này. Sa dư vô dư cho sư đại tô tam. Về luôn dư lê chẳng pa đi. Sang vô sung vô y tô a yi. Vô cơ nam ba sư la đô ba sô. Một đoạn nữa. Sa dư vô dư cho sư đại tô tam. Về luôn dư lê chẳng pa đi. Sang vô sung vô vô cơ nam ba sư la đô ba sô. Sa dư vô dư cho sư đại tô tam. Về luôn dư lê chẳng pa đi. Sang vô sung vô vô cơ nam ba sư la đô ba sô. Với đàn người đã mà làm điều tài về Janjot Sanjot Bojo Madhavan Jekuje Jewa Namano Nguyện đến công đức này hướng về khắp nước đông đảo. Đà tổ an chúng sinh được tiến hành Phật đạo. Bây giờ mình lên dân khăn kata cho ngài để mà nhận cái blessing của ngài. Ngài sẽ ban cho chúng ta cái sợi dây chùy đỏ và những cái viên thuốc thuốc cách. Rồi mình xếp hàng lên mỗi người dân khăn kata. Nếu mà ai không có khăn kata thì mua cái khăn kata ở trung tâm á, lên dân cho ngài. Khi quý vị về xin quý vị ở lại dọn dẹp cái nhà bếp nha, và phần thân vào nhà bếp. Xin cảm ơn.